Hello and welcome to this CYBELEC video, in which we'll show you how to create and personalize your own tools in your CybTouch numerical control. For this example, we'll create a new punch. To do that, let's access the punch tool page by touching here. The punch currently being used is displayed. We would like to create a punch like this one. First thing to do is fill in the basic characteristics of our new punch, the angle and radius of its tip, its height and its resistance. To do that, we simply need to touch the desired characteristic and change its value. So the height of our new punch is 160 mm, its radius is 2 mm, and its resistance is 175 tons per meter. On this first page, we can also define the mounting direction of our tool and whether it can withstand bottoming or not. Next, we can press this button to access this page. Here we will define the type and all the dimensions of our tool. First, the type of punch: straight, normal, or gooseneck. Ours is normal. The illustration on the right shows the tool resulting from the given dimension. As those dimensions remain from the previous tool, it can sometimes be a bit difficult to see which dimension goes where. In this case, simply touch the illustration to display the default image of the punch, like this. Let's now enter the new values. They are either given by the manufacturer or directly measured on the tool. Please note that these dimensions are identical to those used on all of CYBELEC's numerical controls. If your workshop uses other CYBELEC NCs, you can simply copy the dimensions found in PC 1200 or PC Mod EVA. Two more parameters are available: Safety XS, which determines the security distance between the tool and the back gauge for X-axis, and X correction if the punch is not perfectly aligned. Our tool is now defined. You only need to save it to be able to use it. This is done by touching the tool name and selecting Save Punch As. CYBELEC recommends using specific names for the tools in order to be able to identify them simply by their name. A convention is given in the user manual. Our little demonstration is now complete. We hope you enjoyed it. Hello and welcome to this CYBELEC video, in which we'll demonstrate the great usefulness of the page called EasyBend. In a not so uncommon production situation, an urgent job comes along where one part must be bent. The production must be interrupted and a second operator can quickly program a particular bend on the EasyBend page. The EasyBend page contains basically the same fields as the normal program page. And as with the normal program, the first parameter to define is the material. Let's touch it. This sends us to the More page, where we can define a number of extra parameters. We'll just program what's needed, and that is the material, its thickness, and the bending width. The tools selected on the EasyBend page are those used in the current program. Ideally, the urgent bend can be made with these. If not, the tools can of course be selected here. The next step is to enter the bend we need to make. In our case, a 120-degree bend on a 245 mm long flange. Pressing the start button will then send the back gauge into position. When the machine is ready, the button switches to OK. The second operator can then press the foot pedal to execute his urgent part. Once the bend is done, the first operator only needs to select Current Program to resume the production from where it was interrupted. Hello and welcome to this CYBELEC video, in which we'll demonstrate how to create a part with the touch profile function on our CybTouch numerical controls. Okay, let's start by creating a new program, and then we'll launch the touch profile function. Before we can begin to draw our part, we must define its material and the tools we'll be using to bend it. For the material, each touch on the name will select the next available material from the list. The default thickness of the chosen material is displayed, but it is very easy to modify it. We will then choose the punch that we'll be using by touching here. The arrows will let you browse through the available tools. Let's quickly do the same for the die. We are now ready to begin drawing our part on the screen. Each touch creates a new segment, and we can easily create a basic profile. The following step consists of precisely defining each length and angle. For a segment's length, a touch in its center allows us to adjust its value. Let's quickly do the same for the other segment's lengths. For an angle, the process is pretty much the same. You just have to touch it. As you can see, the minus sign defines the direction of the angle from its origin. Okay, we now have a profile corresponding to what we want, and we must define the bending order by touching here. On this page, you can see a small drawing at the bottom which lets you see how the part will be bent and eventually change the bending order if needed. So, let's define the order of the bends as we want to execute them, say, like this. Once the last bend is defined, the screen switches to this page. Here we can see our part before and after each bend, and so we can adjust the gauging type and position if necessary by touching on these icons. For each sequence, you must then at least define the bending width by pressing here, and then enter the width of your part here. As you can see, many extra parameters are available for each sequence, such as back gauge retraction, dwell time, crowning, and so on. Our part is now completely programmed and ready to be bent as it is. To do that, we must simply come back to the first step and press the Start button. The back gauge moves into position, and the button switches to OK when the machine is ready for the bend. The operator can now press the foot pedal to execute the first bend. If we plan to use this part program later in the future, we can also save it under a chosen number like this. Our demonstration is now complete. Hello, and welcome to this CYBELEC video, where we'll show you how to program a part in numerical mode on our CybTouch numerical controls. This is the part we want to bend, and we're going to execute the bends in the following order. First, let's create a new program by touching the program number in the top left-hand corner. Before entering any bending information, we have to select the tools that will be used. This is simply done by touching the tool icon here. You can then browse through the library of existing tools using these arrows and select the desired one. Let's repeat the procedure for the die. Once the tools are selected, we have another basic parameter to define, and that is what sort of sheet metal we will be bending. A simple touch on the material's name on top of the screen brings us to the More page. Touching the material's name selects the next pre-programmed material with its default thickness and sigma values. Both these values can be manually modified, of course. The More page contains many sequence parameters, and they are explained in details in the user manual. But one of them is necessary to be able to properly configure the bend we are trying to program, and that is the bending length. It is programmed here and will help determine the bending force, the crowning, etc. Coming back to the main page, we will now program the first bend of our part. If you remember the drawing, it was a 35mm long flange with a 90-degree angle. The default angle already shows 90 degrees. We will then just program 35mm for the flange's length. To create the following bend, we just need to touch this arrow. The next steps of our program are made in the very same manner, and we'll quickly breeze through them. The 4 bends of our part are now programmed. To use this program, we can simply come back to the first step and press the Start button. The back gauge moves into position and the button switches to OK when the machine is ready for the bend. The operator can now press the foot pedal to execute the first bend. If we plan to use this part program later in the future, we can also save it under a chosen number like this. Okay, this is the end of our demonstration. Hello and welcome to this CYBELEC video, in which we'll show you how to change the language on your CybTouch. CybTouch machines are delivered in English, but they contain a number of other languages. To change the language, simply go to the User Preference menu and touch Language. You can browse through the pop-up menu content with the arrows and select the language of your choice. It's that easy. Hello and welcome to this CYBELEC video, in which we'll teach you how to apply corrections to your bends. We have a program loaded and we'll press the start button to get the machine ready. Once ready, we'll press on the foot pedal to execute the first bend, a 90-degree angle on a 30mm long flange. Using a protractor, we'll check the angle of our bend. The measuring tool shows it is still a bit open. To be precise, it measured 91.6 degrees. To correct this, we must touch here on our main page. This opens the correction page, where we will simply enter our measured angle after touching here. As you can see, the values of axes Y1 and Y2 are automatically corrected accordingly. Our angle is now corrected, but it is not the only dimension we must check. We wanted the flange to be 30mm long, but it is only 29.6. On the correction page, we can also correct the back gauge positions. Let's correct the x-axis value here and enter the difference to the desired dimension. Our first bend is now perfect, and we can come back to the main page and proceed in the same manner with any other corrections needed. One last quick tip. The back gauge corrections can be directly applied from the main page by touching here or here. This concludes our video. You now know how to properly apply corrections to your parts on your CybTouch. We hope you enjoyed this video. Thank you for watching.